Impact and Policy Important here.
Continue.
Namaste and greetings. I, Shadia Zubair, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav or Niti Anusandhan Sansthan, Nayi Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Talk. We are gathered here today for the IMPRI 7th annual series of thematic deliberations and analysis of union budget for the financial year 2026-27. As part of the series, we will be engaging in a panel discussion on gender, social inclusion, and union budget 2026-27. This discussion is organized by the IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center under the IMPRI Web Policy Talk series. I warmly welcome all of you to this insightful deliberation and thank you for tuning in. The chair and moderator is Professor Vibhuti Patel Ji, Visiting Distinguished Professor, IMPRI, former Professor, TIS. Today's expert panelists include Professor Paramita Saha Ji, Professor, Department of Economics, Tripura University, Ms. Deepa Pawar Ji, Founder Director, Anubhuti Trust, Ms. Aarohi Damle Ji, Senior Researcher, Center for Inquiry into Health and Allied Themes, Mumbai, Ms. Neeta Hardikar Ji, Director, Anandi, Gujarat, Dr. G. Umaji, Associate Professor, School of Gender and Development Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi, Professor Neha Shah Ji, Associate Professor, LG Institute of Management Studies, Ahmedabad, Ms. Supriya Jaan Ji, Grassroots Leadership and Knowledge Building, Koro, India. The conveners of the program are Dr. Simi Mehta Ji, Dr. Arjun Kumar Ji. To begin today's discussion, I am honored to invite Professor Vibhuti Patel Ji, Chair and Moderator, to share her opening remarks. We welcome you and over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shadia, for introducing the course, introducing the panel discussion, and also giving preliminary remarks. I welcome our panelists, very esteemed panelists, all 6 of them who have done a lot of work in terms of analyzing budgets and also at a ground level research and all. So, welcome Dr. Paramita Saha, Dr. Neha Shah, for Aarohi Damle, then Neeta Hardikar ji, Supriya Sonar, and our Professor G. Kumar. While discussing the Union Budget 2026-27 with regards to gender and social inclusion, we must place on record that for past 2 decades, civil society organizations, the research think tanks, and also the organizations have played pivotal role in providing evidence-based demand, organizing participatory bottom-up processes of need assessment, and communicated us and the demands of the people during the pre-budget period to all the finance ministry as well as the nodal ministries and in priority areas of budgetary allocation. It is distressing to know that none of the demands made by child rights organizations, Dalit groups, Adivasi associations, Feminist Policy Collective, Janagraha, or Janaswasthya Abhiyan Right to Education campaign have been included in the budget for past 6 years. Feminist Policy Collective pre-budget consultations of economists, social science researchers, practitioners at the grassroots level provide profile of ground realities, transformatory budget recommendations. Based on these consultations, Feminist Policy Collectives also this year also, it gave its recommendation well in advance, because in November, the workshops were organized to see to it that resource justice for rights and gender equality are ensured in the budget. But none of the suggestions of the social sector activists have been included in the budget. As a result, it is felt that this supply side budget is concerned only about upper strata of the economy, even on the vital sectors of human development such as education, health, skill enhancement, and support services. In the name of reduction in deficit budget, basic needs of the citizens at the bottom of the pyramid have been facing those who are facing intersectional vulnerabilities of caste, class, ethnicity, religion, gender are ignored in the budget. Despite promise made in 2017 for an allocation of health budget to the tune of 2.5% of GDP, an allocation, but currently the allocation is only 1.9% of total budgetary expenditure and 0.26 of with the citizens are paying. Jan Swasthya Abhiyan has demanded health budget must be 1% of GDP and constitute 5% of the total budgetary expenditure. And that demand was placed nearly 2 weeks in advance. The gender budgeting got institutionalized in the financial year 2005-06. Over the years, it has improved by adding more ministries and departments reporting allocations for the budget. Now we have more than 49 ministries which are submitting budget. And what we have seen is that as a result, so gender budget is happening. It is so many new schemes have also come as a result of the demand of the people and also by the women's organizations and gender economists. So part A of the budget, which is 100% for women-specific schemes. Part B is from 33 to 99% allocation for women, and part C, which is below 30% of allocation in various schemes. So what we see that in the current budget, when the budget allocation is 9.6, which is 5 lakhs crore more than which comes to the 5 lakhs crores, and it is more than last year's budget. And some of the concerns that have been expressed are supports to the Divyanjan and also focus on rural development is also claimed. But now let us see, we have an expert here who would tell us more about it. And central government has prioritized women's empowerment in terms of safety, which they have shown Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, Mission Shakti, Sambal and Samarthya, and also Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Nirbhaya funds, all are there. But what we see is that massive underutilization of these funds. That is another issue that has been brought out by the organizations. And also the digital connectivity, the mandatory requirement for any of the government schemes, that has also caused major concern to the grassroots organizations because so many people are left out. So here we have 7 expert panelists, Professor Paramita Shah, who will enlighten us about macroeconomy and the gender budget of northeastern states, Professor Neha, who will focus on education, health, and other macroeconomic parameters and public economics, Ms. Neha Hardikar, who will speak who will enlighten us about the gender budget on women in agriculture, how the digitalization has had impacted women in the anti-poverty schemes and the livelihood of the marginalized sections. And we have Supriya Sonarji, who will talk to us about the WASH budget and also the basic needs of the livelihood needs of the women at the grassroots level. And Ms. Aarohi Damle, who has worked on this issue of gender-based violence, she will provide the dissection of the allocations made for addressing gender-based violence, and also Dr. G. Uma, who will speak to us about the overall impact of the budget and with special focus on women in informal sector, because 94% of the workforce is in informal sector. So my first question is to Professor Paramita Shah, that does the Union Budget 2026-27 encompass the demands of all sections of the Indian economy? Can we call it intersectional, participatory, gender responsive budgeting? Can you provide your arguments about that? And also, does the budget address gender needs and the demands of people of the northeastern states? Over to Professor Paramita Shah.
First of all, a very good afternoon to everyone. And my thanks to VIBHUTI Patel ji for having me here and for her kind words of appreciation, but I do not, I hope I come up to that. Actually, when I was looking at the budget and trying to make the PPT, I was looking at the last year's budget also, and it seems so similar. I could have just made. Sorry, last year also we were talking about this external uncertainties. We're talking about the growth we need to have. This year also it's the similar. If you go to my first slide, yeah. Look, this volatile global economic condition, uncertain geopolitical scenario, disturbances across borders. Last time it was the Ukraine war, Putin and Zelensky. This year it's Trump making our good work go awry, and there is rising tariff on export, supply chain, access to resource all disrupted, slowing of global trade. So in this context, the new thing that has come up is to build resilience, build capacity, and find resources to foster growth that is inclusive. Next. Yeah. Before I go into that, what is proposed in the budget, we can look at the economic survey. The economic survey started in a very happy note, laying down all the good performances like PFC at the 61% of GDP because it is boosted by rural consumption, because of good agriculture performances, and urban consumption was backed by employment and tax rationalization. GDP growth is projected at 7.5% with service sector contribution to GDP at 53.4%. That is huge. It is driven by the IT, business services, and digitally delivered services, which also attracts 80% of FDI inflows and contributing to exports. Private financial consumption expenditure at 61.5% of GDP. Rural consumption, it is claimed, has improved because of good agricultural performance, and urban consumption was backed by employment and tax rationalization. Gross fixed capital formation at 30% of GDP. Am I audible? Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yeah. There is sustained private capital revenue receipt. It has increased expenditure, increased expenditure coupled with private investment. On the revenue generation side, revenue receipt increased, direct tax base has expanded, GST collection improved, effective capital expenditure rose, and government debt to GDP ratio was contained. But the problem started when we talk about the external sector. The current account deficit is moderate at 8.8% of GDP. Export increase, as I said, driven mainly by the service sector, which counterbalanced the merchandise trade deficit. Remittances emerged as the key source of external funding, but foreign portfolio investment remained fluctuating in the face of global uncertainties. So widening balance of payment deficit coupled with market uncertainties over the trade disturbances, deals with USA resulted in depreciation of Indian rupee. So the alarm bell started ringing. So in this context, export diversification in terms of high value goods and services, and also with respect to trading partners, integration with global value chain should be at the core of future trade strategies. Social sector initiatives and targeted welfare schemes, according to the economic survey, expanded access to service-led access to services led to reduction of poverty levels and improvements in key health and education indicators like life expectancy, the IMR, gross enrollment ratio, indicating gains in overall health outcomes like maternal and child health, access to education, and human capital formation. All these underscore the role of inclusive growth, sustained social sector investment, and welfare measures for the foundation of a resilient economy. Next. Yeah. The normative frame of all these was earlier also Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, but this time the finance minister opened her budget speech extolling the prime minister, saying that we should all shun the ambivalence to take decisive action. Actual reform should be initiative instead of rhetoric, and interest of people should get priority instead of populism. In order to fulfill our kartavyas to accelerate and sustain growth, build capabilities, and fulfill people's aspirations, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. Here, Sabka Saath, I would mean to say that taking everybody along. It also can mean participation by every section of the society, every corner of the country. To do this, there are reforms. A lot of reforms were rolled out: the GST simplification, notification of labor codes. To accelerate and sustain economic growth, intervention is proposed in 6 areas. Next. 6 areas are identified: scaling up of manufacturing and strategic sectors, creating champion MSMEs, infrastructure building, energy security, and developing city economic regions. It is proposed that India should develop as a global biopharma manufacturing hub. 10,000 crores of outlay over 5 years is proposed. The Shakti strategy for healthcare advancement through knowledge, technology, and innovation. Building capital goods capability, high-tech tool rooms, construction and infrastructure equipment, container manufacturing, and then the integrated program for textile sector. None of these are anything new. In fact, the textile sector, mega textile park, all these were going on since, I think, 2017. Next. Then other growth initiatives include Mahatma Gandhi Gram Swaraj to strengthen khadi, handloom, and handicrafts to benefit weavers and village industries. One district, one product slogan is also not new. MSME support, sports good manufacture are also a continuing effort. For creating champion MSMEs, setting up of SME growth fund, topping up self-reliant India fund that was set up in 2021 with 2,000 crore, providing liquidity support through trades in trade receivable, electronic discounting systems that enables MSMEs to convert their trade receivables, that is unpaid invoices, into cash by auctioning them to banks and financial institutions. Thus, digital technology is leveraged for all sorts of programs. Professional support to the MSMEs are to be provided by corporate mitras, accredited para-professionals trained at professional institutions like ICAI, ICSI, ICMAI, helping the MSMEs in compliance at affordable cost. This creating some employment for youth. Cities are recognized as engines of growth, innovation, and opportunities and will receive focus in modern infrastructure and amenities. City infrastructure development in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities with over 5 lakh population is proposed. Infrastructure Risk Guarantee Fund will be provided to partial credit guarantee to lenders to encourage private developers. City economic region to be designed as agglomerations. In this respect, high-speed rail corridors between cities at growth connectors, Mumbai, Pune, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai, Delhi, Varanasi, and Siliguri from east to west. And next, so I call it a budget which reflects continuity and consolidation. If we look at the macroeconomic indicators of fiscal deficit, revenue deficit, primary deficit, all are declining over time, and fiscal management is done well, and with capex at 12.2 lakh crore, so expenditure is not compromised, but all efforts to ease of doing business and all creating facilities and amenities gives us an impression that it's trying to only or catering to only the supply side of the economy. Next. If we come to the question of inclusion, in this budget, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas is looked up. Last year, it was the Gyan. Now, it is the increasing farmers' income, empowering the Bangjan, empowering the vulnerable, focus on Purvodaya states and Northeast region. I will try to go, it's not possible to go into each and every scheme that is proposed. I will selectively look at things how they are. To achieve sustained growth based on youth power, job opportunities and favorable conditions for self-employment needs to be in place or created. Here, services sector is to provide the pathway to fulfilling aspiration of youthful India. A high-powered standing committee on education to employment and enterprise is to recommend measures to identify potential for growth, employment and exports, impact of emerging technologies on job and skill requirements, new range of skilled career pathways for youth like allied health professionals are proposed, optometry, radiology, anesthesia, OT technology, applied psychology and behavioral health, 10 lakh allied health professionals over next 5 years will be rolled out. The focus on psychology and behavioral health and mental health is a welcoming step. A strong care ecosystem covering geriatric and allied care services, combining core care and allied skill, such as wellness, yoga, operation of medical and assistive devices are proposed. Hubs for medical value tourism, 5 regional medical hubs in partnership with private sectors with medical, educational, and research facilities are proposed. And then this orange economy, where animal visual effects, gaming, and comics will require 2 million professionals by 2023. AVGC content creator labs in 15,000 schools and 500 colleges are proposed. 5 university townships with multiple universities, colleges, research institutions, skill centers, and residential complexes. 1 girl hostel in every district is proposed. As United Kingdom is allowed to set up campuses in India, this only seems logical. Tourism is another sector with potential to generate employment. National Institute of Hospitality proposed to be built up. A pilot scheme for upskilling 10,000 guides in 20 iconic tourist sites. Then destination designing of sustainable trekking and hiking, mountain trails in Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Jammu and Kashmir in Eastern and Western Ghats, turtle trails along coasts of Odisha, Kerala, Karnataka, bird watching trails in Andhra and Tamil Nadu. Heritage and cultural tourism combined with immersive storytelling and technologies are expected to employ people and attract tourists. Higher share of revenue empower the states to design these policies as per their own requirements. The employment guarantee schemes of MG and REX has been revamped into Viksit Bharat Guarantee for Rozgar and Ajivika Mission, with the guarantee of 125 days of work. However, state governments need to cover 40% of the cost, which is going to be difficult for many states. Next. For us, inclusion will mean employment creation, about which the steps that are proposed in this budget, but which I've already talked. Next, we'll see how the expenditures are there. Yeah, expenditures on major items shows us that major amounts, it is not shown here. I have only identified those items which relates to inclusion more directly, and the social sector expenditure, which are the major buildings blocks for the economy, like pensions, rural development, agriculture and allied activities, education, health, social welfare, and development of the Northeast, because I'm told to talk about the Northeast. The percentage share of total major part of expenditure are spent on, on interest payment, transport, defense, etc. Pensions, on pensions we spend 5.54%, and rural development 5.11%. As you can see, education and health, as Madam VIBHUTI Patel was also telling us that the amounts or the proportion of expenditure spent on education and health is meager. And much is being talked about development of Northeast. The expenditure on donor, Department of Northeast Development, is 0.13% of the total budget, and we can understand where we stand. Next. Yeah. Now coming to the gender budget statement in the statement 13A, B, and C. We know already that in the gender budget, the part A are those schemes which have 100% benefit to women, part B 30 to 99%, and part C up to 30%. If we look at the gender budget, kindly see that the second and the third column, 2025-26 budget estimate and 25-26 revised estimate, all items in the third column is less than the second column, which means that the allocated amount was not spent. Large amount remained unspent. And if you look at the last column, you realize the brackets, the figures in the brackets shows the proportion of the total budget, GBS, coming from part A, part B, and part C. Part A, the proportion of part A is, that is the schemes 100% for 100% benefit for women are gradually declining. The part B includes those from across the ministries which are common for everyone, not target-oriented, like women beneficiary-oriented schemes. This is one. Thus, it embedding women development with larger development program in place of targeted initiatives. Broad-based rural infrastructure schemes like Jal Jeevan, PM Kisan Yojana, etc. are added into the Part B. Next. These are the schemes under Part A from different departments or different ministries. You can see that schemes for safety of women, there are outlays from police, from road transport and highways, safe tourist destination, all these. Then we have PM Awas Yojana for urban and for Gramin. One comes under Rural Development Department, one comes under city government. Similarly, LPG connection with poor households, Deen Dayal Antyodaya, Rural Livelihood Mission. Yeah. Next, yeah. Now we have, these are the schemes and allocations in the Ministry of Women and Child Development. These are also presented as Part A and Part B program. Then the Part A, the schemes that are included are Mission Shakti, National Commission for Women, and other schemes funded from Nirbhaya Fund. So there is various ministries, various departments, similar programs are conducted. So there is a need for convergence. For example, different ministries running similar schemes. For example, in skilling, both Ministry of Women and Child Development and Ministry of Skill Development run the programs. So there is a need for convergence, and also it's not about allocation, it's also about implementation. Next. Statement 12 is about welfare of children and the budget for children. Here also, it's presented as Part A, Part B, and Part C. Children form a sizable portion of population. Nearly 27% are of school-going age. Share of budget for children has increased marginally from 2.29% to 2.47%. You can see Part C allocation has gone up from 7,142 in 24-25 to 15,344 due to inclusion of Jal Jeevan Mission allocation for in this category. Achha. PM Poshan has increased by only, I have not mentioned the scheme separately, but the data shows that it has increased by only 2%. If we look at the health indicators like stunting, wasting, anemia among the children, this is highly inadequate. 35 point, NFHS 5, 35.5% of children under 5 years are affected by stunting. 19.3% wasting are prevalent, which is highest globally. Anemia is also rampant. Next. In this slide, just for keeping things brief, I have mentioned the Northeast areas and the plans for ST and SC. The statement 11 is for Northeastern region, statement 10B for ST and 10A for SC. And the figures do not are the aggregate of expenditures or outlays made in every ministries that is given in the statement for Northeast region under 11, for the STs under 10B, and for the SCs under 10A. This is not the ministry's allocation. Donor is a ministerial allocation of 6,812 crores, higher than the previous year allocation of 5,915 crores. Out of the total budget of 53.34 lakh crores, donor receives only 0.13% against 0.12% in the last budget. So far, so much for the increased budget for Northeast. Northeast is looked as integrated with the Eastern region through the larger plan of Purvodaya and poised to benefit from the Siliguri corridor that is being proposed, a part of a broader development vision. Proposals for connectivity, tourism, and local industries are there. It is said that development of Buddhist tourism circuit has the potential to draw visitors from Southeast Asian countries. Tourism growth in turn catalyzes jobs in hotels, travel services, transportation, local craft markets, and environmental conservation, especially in areas where alternative employment opportunities are limited. Urban development has emerged as a priority area in the budget. A dedicated allocation of 5,000 crore has been earmarked for development of Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, as I have already noted before. Including the cities includes several from the Northeast: Guwahati, Dibrugarh, Silchar, Imphal, and Agartala. The funding received under this may be utilized for public transport system, waste management and sanitation, digital governance platforms, affordable housing, smart infrastructure. By strengthening urban ecosystem, the budget aims to create regional economic hubs that generate employment and reduce migration to the metropolitan cities. Now, looking at the tribal subplan or statement 10B, the German program for particularly vulnerable tribal groups, under which 6,351 crore was to be spent across ministries in 2025-26, only 3,997 crore was actually utilized. Similarly, for other schemes like Ekalabha Model Residential Schools, 7,088 crores were earmarked. Budget shows that only 4,900 crore was spent. A significant portion of funds for pre-metric scholarship for tribal students remain unspent. So it's not about allocation. It's about how to implement things better and how to take people along. The all effort for growth is all right, but we have to make sure that people do not fall away from the growth trajectory that we follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Paramita, for providing such an important, exhaustive macroeconomic view and locating the budget 26-27 in that context. The major highlights of your presentation that first of all, it's a very elitist bent of the whole budget. Plus, supply side is the only taken care of, and the social sector has become a stepchild once again, as it happened earlier also. And major problem is that whatever has been allocated is also not utilized. Now I come to Professor Neha Shah, and can you focus more on the some of the important aspects of the budget as the economist, like how do you find the budget in general and also allocation in social sector, and also what are your views on MG Narega being replaced by VB Ramji, and also will Ramji be adequate for intersectionally vulnerable women and gender diverse persons, because gender diverse persons or transgender are not even mentioned in the budget this time, which happens to be 4% of the population in our country is of gender diverse people. And also what kind of social security and social protection you would recommend for the platform-based workers, and are they taken care of in the budget? Over
Am
to
I
Dr.
audible now?
Yes, you are on.
Okay. Thank you very much, Vibhuti Ben.
Little closer.
Thank you very much, Vibhuti Ben. Is it clear? Now my voice is clear?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
And are my slides visible? My
Yes.
screen visible?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much, Vibhuti Ben, for inviting me. Thank you, IMPRI, for organizing this and developing such an interesting, thought-provoking discussion every year with reference to budget. Uh, my focus is going to be about what is importance of social inclusion, right? And as right now Viptiben said, that social sector has always been given a stepchild treatment. So in that context, we must understand what is its importance and why we need to correct that particular approach. Uh, okay. Uh, so first
Little
of all,
louder, huh? You're very faint. Your voice is very faint.
am I still faint? Hello?
Now it's okay. Now it's okay.
Okay, so I'll keep the mic. Is this okay?
Yeah.
So when we talk about the social sector, uh, one must understand that, and we must acknowledge that this particular sector is important in terms of like, giving a lot of employment. Is my slide visible? I'm not able to see my own slides.
Slide is visible. It's in working mode. You can make it in slideshow mode. And also, please speak louder. Yeah. Your voice is for like break.
Okay. Just give me half a minute. I think
Because
I'm not able to see my own
intermittently
slides.
we lose out. Yeah, on your, yeah. It's not consistently
Okay.
audible. Yeah. Hello.
Just a minute. Just give me 1 second, Vibhuti. I think there's some problem at my end.
Okay.
Okay, is my slide visible? And am I
Yes.
audible now?
Yes, both.
Click on the cusp.
So
it will be in.
Yeah, but it is just changing. Okay,
Not
is it
working.
the full
No,
screen now?
Yeah, fine.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we talk about the vulnerable sections of the society or the weaker section of the society, I think the focus is badly needed over there for the not just for the welfare purpose. Of course, the welfare aspect is important because I mean we have to consider the vulnerability of this section and have to keep them afloat. But besides, there are pure economic reasoning for that. uh, they are important resources of the economy, and so in order to improve the production function of our economy, I think we need to strengthen their capabilities. We need to integrate them into our economy by improving their human capital is also very important. Same section of the society which is still their capital, even if we look from the current economic structure, uh, they are also creating they're also potential consumers whose potential consumption capacities are not yet fully utilized. So I think there is also very important thing to consider this particular fact, especially when we are facing a serious geoeconomic crisis, and where the country is facing so much of a setbacks because of what the Trump is doing, or what are those trade deals, and how we are forced to negotiate on those lines. So I think we need to understand that this is something is worth focusing. First, the need to think differently about this sector. But what is happening? What are the reality, and why this sector requires a specific focus? So, India has emerged as one of the highest unequal country, right? This is I think we rank fourth in the world in terms of inequality. So if you look at our Gini coefficient ratio measured in 2023, it is 0.4, which has increased from 0.3, which was in 1955. That was soon after independence. So as our riches have improved, probably our Gini coefficient should have narrowed, but it has increased. And that we are aware of the fact that the 1% of the population in the country, the richest population of the country, have a control over almost 40% of the total national wealth, while the bottom 50% only controls around the 3% of the wealth. So this is a widening inequality. And so the people who are left out of the market structure, they need to be focused on. Uh, One of the important way of integrating a larger masses is through creating employment, but unemployment rate remains very high in India. Right now it is around 6.8% in January 2026, but last throughout year it has varied between 4.8 to 6.8, which is reasonably high. The real wage rate, in terms of the purchasing power capacity, has dipped in financial year of 25-26 from 7% to 6.5%. So these are the important concerns. Plus, private investment in the country is not rising as it has been expected. I mean, this is not last 1 year, but it is a peak for last several years. Same way, even the FDI flow is also showing a stagnancy somewhere over there. In this given state, the corporate contribution in the total direct taxes has reduced, whereas the burden of the personal taxes have increased on the personal income taxes, that is on the individual. These certainly sets up a ground to ask a question that what is the redistributive justice role that the fiscal policies are supposed to be playing? That is one of the very important role the fiscal policies are supposed to be playing. This time, Nirmala Sitharaman ji said that this is her third kartavya to ensure that every family, community, region, sector has an access to resources and amenities and opportunities for meaningful participation. And she linked it with Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, right? So broadly, she was trying to say ki, like the government do care for the masses, the weaker section, and they want to reach out to the weaker section. But if we analyze the government's policies, and especially this with the reference to the fiscal policy and the current year budget, we need to ask several questions. That what is happening to the economic structure? Is India's mainstream economy able to take care of and integrate the weaker section of the society? What are the government efforts to integrate this weaker section of the society into the mainstream? And how the welfare, if that is not happening, then how the welfare measures are doing? So that if we answer this, we'll get to know exactly whether the intention of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, is addressed or not. So when we talk about the various government schemes, or the major government focus of this particular budget, so we see that, okay, that government wants to boost the investment, and I mean, as Professor Paramita also said, it seems to be more of a supply side budget. So in that particular process, like capital expenditure worth of 12.2 lakh crore of investment is being projected. But if you look at the details, the major chunk of these investments are focused on railways, and even in railways, there are 7 high-speed corridors have been announced, right? On roads and highways, where the national highway and express highways are getting emphasized, ports and waterways. In manufacturing,
Ben,
again,
please speak louder. Your voice is low. Yeah.
okay, sorry. Again, in case of manufacturing, there is a lot of emphasis on semiconductor, rare earth corridors, electronics, biopharmacies, and textile. Except for textile, rest of all sectors are mainly capital intensive sector. Uh, so these are focuses which the government has given, where there are very little chances of more of an employment generation. And without employment generation, it is very difficult to integrate the masses into the mainstream economy. There is an emphasis this time on the small scale enterprises, which categorically the Nirmala Sitharamanji said and mentioned that the sector is essential for employment generation. But the budget allocation for this sector is 10,000 crores in terms of the growth fund, which seems very, very small considering the number of SMEs that we have and number of SMEs which are struggling to get capital clearances. They're struggling to get their marketing done. So for that growth purposes, 10,000 crores means you are not even reaching out to the 10% of the total SME sector. Right. So if we look at our broader objective that what of the economy, we want to maintain a balance between a high growth and integrate the weaker section of the society. It seems that these two objectives are not aligning, looking at this basic structure in which the budget is prepared. Okay, so now comes the second aspect, that if basic mainstream economy is not able to support or has a very little chance to integrate the larger masses, then what are the focused area for that generates the employment? So we come to two, three important points, right? One is MSME. As just now I said that 10,000 crores rupees of fund has been allotted, which is highly inadequate. So though it has been acknowledged that it is important for employment generation, but that is highly inadequate. Second, there is no clarity how this 10,000 rupees, 10,000 lakh crore rupee of fund is going to be spent. So we do not know that what kind of multiplier effect it will generate through MSME. Second, last year PM internship scheme was announced, but allocation this time has been cut down by 55%. Right, it from 10,831 crore, it has directly come down to 4,788 crores, right? And last year also, throughout the year, government spent only 4.8% of the total budget allocated. So the question arises that are the corporate sector, the private sector ready to take the burden? And second, the way the schemes are designed, which gives only the 5,000 rupees per month stipend, are our young people, is this upcoming generation ready to accept this paltry amount? Is this, can they sustain on this paltry amount? So without that, obviously, like this kind of a scheme, which was quite celebrated last time, cannot sustain. And we are seeing the results that it has not sustained. And this time, by cutting down the 55% of the allocation, government itself has acknowledged that this scheme is not sustained. Then comes to another important aspect of the employment, that is Manarega, now which is now been said, Viksit Bharat Ji Ram Ji. Right, and there are two important problems with these schemes. One is that now the component of right which was there in the Manarega is now been removed. So it is completely a scheme. If government wishes to selects a particular area where the scheme is to be operated, only in those areas the schemes will be operated. So the other area, people do not have a right to go to the government and demand the employment, right? So that way, this is a very, very important setback to the masses who were demanding employment and making a government accountable for providing them some kind of an employment. So that is a very major setback for the movement from Manarega to Viramji. And obviously, the second thing is that the 40% of the burden of financing this has been transferred to the state government, which are already scarce, which are already facing a lot of financial issues, especially in the GST regime, where all their sources of the direct income are almost dried up. So in that case, funding 40%, which used to be around 7 to 10% previously, seems to be very, very difficult. So that way, these two issues are widely discussed right since this transfer has happened from Banarega to Viramji. Now, this is the first budget where the G-Ramji scheme budget has been allocated for 125 days of employment. And that the budget is uh, 95,692 crore. And the people who are working directly with the Manrega scheme says that if you do have to fulfill the promise of providing 125 days of employment to the people, you at least require 2.30 lakhs of rupees of 2.30 lakh crores of rupees of budget for that. Comparing what is been targeted and what actually is allotted, there is a serious mismatch between the two. If we look at the other schemes over here, Manarega, obviously, like it is, government is in the mood to phase it out, and so I mean, allocation has been reduced. But if we look at the other scheme also, the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, which is for the capital, matlab building the infrastructure, allotted budget was 19,000 rupees. It has been repeated this time. But actually from 19,000, only 11,000 were spent. Same way, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, again another infrastructure-based scheme, where the allocation, matlab, there was a highly understanding of this particular allocation, and so almost similar amount is repeated in this year. Jal Jeevan Mission, which is like providing the clean drinking water. Only 25% of the budget allocated last year was spent, and again, like uh, allocation was 67,000 rupees, spent was only 17,000. And again, as we see that this year again the government is almost repeating. It is not even adjusting for the rate at which inflation is growing. So these basic schemes, which are like developing infrastructure in the rural area or providing employment in the rural area, seems to be highly neglected. They are not seems to be serving the purpose. In general,
Please speak
India.
louder. Loud.
In general, if you see that the India span has shown that trend of social sector expenditure has gone down, which has marginally improved this time. But again, we cannot say anything because ultimately, how much of that is government going to spend, that will decide exactly what is the situation, right? So if you look at the core social sector, how the budget is like doing in health. Only 1.99% of the budget, matlab, GDP is allotted. Education 2.40, agriculture only 2.63. So again, our old pattern that these all sectors gets a low fiscal priority continues. Public health spending by the center remains at 0.27% of the GDP, which is far below of what is recommended in the national health policy. The education spending stands at 2.40% of the total budget, at around 0.35% of GDP, which is much below the 6% of the GDP that is committed or that recommended in the national education policy, right? So, and same is with the case with agriculture. It's declined, the share has declined from 2.71% to 2.63%. And as we see, that the sectoral growth is also quite hampered. Some of the key schemes which are which should be of a concern for everyone, right? Women and child development. Of course, compared to last year, the budget has drastically improved. But again, in between comes is second row, that what is the revised estimates of the budget. So compared to whatever is allotted in all these important schemes, whether it is a women, the ministry, Ministry of Rural Development, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, yeah, Saksham Anganwadi Poshan Yojana, Samarthya, that is a part of a Mission Shakti, Sambhar, that is again a part of Mission Shakti, right? All this came below than what is been itself is very poor, and even from the poor allocation, where a very limited allocation, now the spending is also very little. So ultimately, what is going to the end user is very, very limited. Now coming to, let's have because my another target is also looking at a gender budget, right? So let's have highlights of the gender budget. There are hits and misses in the gender budget. So first, yes, the allocation is approximately 5 lakh crore for the welfare of women, and that has increased from last year 8.86% to now 9.36% of the total budget. So that is one area where we are seeing a clear rise in the budget allocation. There is a lot of emphasis on strengthening the care economy, and which I consider a very welcoming step. And that is because we have been always talking about that care economy eats up a lot of women's time and affects the time budget, and so that is directly linked to the unpaid work. So if government is emphasizing on building a ecosystem for the care economy, right, where they are proposing to train 1.5 lakh multi-skilled caregivers that includes geriatric care, child care, and allied care services. So that will certainly help the women and their workforce participation rate. How much they are going to implement on that and how much budget actually is allotted to that, needs to be checked in future. uh, Women's and entrepreneurship and self-help group again is getting an emphasis which this government has been giving since last several years. And now they have talked about the She Mart, so that is a self-help group linked marketing space. And advancing girls' education and safe educational infrastructure is in talked about, where girls hostel in STEM institutions, especially, right? And our finance minister very proudly said that India's enrollment in the STEM sector is very high compared to the global standards. So if that is true, then obviously that's a very good thing to happen. And she suggested to have a STEM hostel. But if you look at the budget, there is a mention of STEM hostel, but there is no specific allocation for STEM hostels. So right now, this is consolidated money is given to the women and child development department, in which how this money will be used for developing the STEM hostels. There is no clarity about that. So focus towards the intervention is aimed at labor market participation, asset ownership, legal economic autonomy, and leadership. They are missing in the budget. There is no mention of any kind of a scheme which tries to address these issues which women are raising. And reinforcing the centrality of child welfare, maternal health, and even the Divyangjan within the gender budget. So the total budget allocated includes the schemes towards this objective as well. So how much actually is going for the gender specific budget is not clear. Plus, when we talk about gender budget, it is like, as you asked, it is only about the women. We are not still not talking about the other genders and acknowledging the need for that, right? So women yeah, and women's economic participation is basically been reduced to the rural livelihood schemes and the entrepreneurial schemes. Otherwise, the women's participation and their role in the other forms is not discussed as a part of the total policy framework, right? So here are some other trends which we must see. There is a training, education, and the training and research. Their budget is completely slashed. Total scheme for safety for women has also gone down. Cybercrime prevention against the women and children and the miscellaneous scheme, that particular head is missing. So safety is one of the important concern for women to go out and work and participate in the workforce, or even in the rural area, even for the education, right? Those funds are not doing justice to the objective, right? This is just with reference to hostel that we were talking about. The government has a Sakhi Niwas scheme, but as we see that in last 6 years there is a continuously reducing budget towards that. So we hope that now the new hostel schemes which government is proposing would be able to help somewhat. Right, this is the trend. Trend is very gloomy. So, social expenditure, as usual, budget continues the last pattern. It is showing either stagnant allocation, or in real terms, in many heads, the funds going to the schemes are falling down. So it seems that the acknowledged the fiscal consolidation that this budget is able to attain to bring down the fiscal deficit to 4.3%. That's what the target is. So it seems that one of the stress, I mean, one of the sector which face the stress of the fiscal consolidation is the social sector. Right. So that is something, matlab, uh, when we talk about 4.3% deficit, I think we need to analyze exactly how this government is able to cut down on its expenditure. So which are the area that have been targeted. Considering the last year's budget and comparing and looking at the way government has spent money almost in all social sector, one wonders to ask the question whether the budget analysis is remain relevant anymore, because it is not telling what exactly government is trying to do, or what their intentions are, or what their policy perspectives are. Something which they are talking in the budget and something which they actually is happening in reality, there is a serious disconnect between the two. And I think which is making the fiscal policy and the government's budget exercise really questionable. So I think that is what we need to understand, right?
Thank you,
I think thank you
Professor.
very much.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Neha Shah, for such a important contribution in terms of dissecting all the schemes from the gender lens and also contextualizing it in the overall thrust of the budget. And you are right that the kind of disappointment which you have shown, that is it really worth the exercise? I think this is the collective feeling of all the social sector activists that you have expressed. Now I come to our third panelist, Ms. Neeta Hardikar. Your organization, Anandi, is working with the rural and tribal women. And I would like to know, how does your organization, because you have also organized several roundtables in which women elected representatives, young adolescent girls, all of them have expressed their life situation. On the basis of that, what is your response to the union budget? And of the major concerns that has emerged right from the time in the post-pandemic period is the question of linking of schemes to the digitalization. And is it a boon or bane for poor women? And how the National Food Security Act, NFSA, 2013 impacted poor women in all these years? And do we need to have a relook at the design of that NFSA? And Dr. Neha has already spoken about the NG being replaced by VBG and what has been its impact, but you can share your experiences at a ground level.
Thank you, Vibhuti Ben, and good afternoon to all panelists as well as all the participants here. Compared to what has been already said by three professors, my review to the points that have been asked here are based on the practice that I am part of and the organization I come from. So I think what has very evocatively been said by Vibhuti in the very beginning, that as part of Feminist Policy Collective, as part of several people's campaigns and women's movement, has raised the issues of women's budget for women's empowerment and budget for the social sector, which has been there in discussion for quite some time. And as both Paramita ji and Neha said, that a lot of it in this budget seems more of the same. It clearly shows that what was allocated earlier, there has been underspending. So the question is on the intent. A lot of times I wondered in last 6 days, when the word kartavya was used, did it mean that they are talking about the kartavya of the welfare state, or whatever has not been done is assumed to be the kartavya of the samaj? And I thought this was really pushing the whole responsibility onto people. Apna fodlo. I mean, do what you can do, but this is what has been this is what has been the focus of the economics, the economy, the finance ministry of this government. So I think a lot of the areas of social sector where we see marginal increase. What we also see from the previous year, there has been underspending. So the policy and the budget need to speak to each other, and there seems to be a gap in that. So broadly speaking, this is what my perception is of the current budget. There are no new flagship programs. There was an expectation that women farmers have been told since 2024 that what came as PM Kisan Yojana as a support to small and marginal farmers, women farmers would get at least double of what the current scheme is giving, which is 2,000 rupees in 3 installments to the farm landowners. Women farmers that amount would have really made a lot of difference. It is in past 3 budgets, we've not been hearing anything on that. So how much are we talking about those who produce food, the small and submarginal farmer women, who are in this sector in a very big number, and they are the ones who look after the food needs of the whole country. Somewhere this is being missing. Connecting this point to the point of how the NFSA, National Food Security Act 2013, is doing, I think there is a sense of achievement in most of the movement colleagues, women leaders from community, the Right to Food campaign, that over last the struggle which began in 2000 actually resulted into a legal entitlement under the National Food Security Act. I come from Gujarat, and in Gujarat, what we see that the act implemented in 2016 has now resulted into a lot of deletion of ration cards. Now, the deletion of ration card is one is allocating a budget, but at the same time, in under the guise of reducing corruption, you are introducing some of the policies which are actually denying rights of people, rights that are the rights of the people. The deletion is happening in such a way that where there are no you are saying that the census has not been done for now almost so many years. There are no economic studies to define the poverty line. We have been consistently seeing increase in malnutrition levels in all groups, right? From children, newborns to the adolescent girls to the women, the nutrition levels are so low. So in terms of NFSA, the achievement is that, yes, the law happened, the law came in force. The ration cards are now recognizing women as the household head of the household. But what it is not covering is the still some of those who are left behind, whose surveys are not done, who are migrant population, whose records are not in place. So the demand of the campaigns, all campaigns, right from right to food to health and work, and all the campaigns are demanding universalization of food security, which has not been happening. I think in the budgets, this can definitely be ensured, and we continue to demand that the universalization of food right must happen. The second point that is actually denying is actually the biggest point in most schemes. And you asked me about how is digitalization a goal. I think many sitting here and many who are part of this consultation and discussion here would agree that digitalization in no ways has been of any kind of boon to except Sarkar, nobody else. So what one can see is that digitalization has led to denial of most basic rights. To begin with, your own identity card is denied to you because in certain data that the government is creating and holding, the information is incorrect and you are made responsible for that, and therefore you are denied basic Aadhaar card. You are not allowed, you are not given your voter card because some of your names and your card don't match. In many cases in Gujarat, and I know for in many other states where the Right to Food campaign is active, that the cards become silent because the cardholder family has migrated out. We speak about one nation, one ration, but it is very, very difficult to find any positive responses to that. Migrant population still struggle to get the ration to places where they migrate to their destiny, to the sites where they go and work. So, in the food security aspect, the digitalization has not worked. In fact, there have been the data that gets created in the whole digitalization process, and I see in this budget also a lot of focus on technology, a lot of focus on AI-based processes. I think it's not going to again benefit the larger social, the larger category that we are talking about in the gender budget and social inclusion category. There are instances where women farmers who are leading their own farmer producer organizations, and the state had announced that they would promote farmer producer organizations. Now, women who lead the farmer producer organization registered as the board of directors of these small organizations are said that you are board of directors and therefore you don't need a ration card, and therefore single women farmers have been denied the ration card, and one had to the campaign had to really put the whole struggle right up to the ministry, and information doesn't come to you because other legal bindings like data protection kind of barriers don't make this information available that one is seeking to understand where the problem comes from. So in terms of how digitalization is used, it's definitely not to curb the corruption, because corruption continues. In Narega, where we see that it was assumed that mobile-based monitoring system would curb the corruption, because in the mobile-based monitoring system, the mate or the Rozgar Sahayak is expected to take two pictures of the wage worker who comes on the site, and those pictures have to be uploaded. Now, on the Narega sites where this is expected, we have seen Rozgar Sahayaks walking into deep waters where probably the network is there, or climbing the tree to make sure that she's able to upload the images. In the process, if the images don't get uploaded, the attendance is not noted, and people may walk 4 to 5 kilometers to the work site to actually go work there, but since the network is not functional, their attendance doesn't get noted, and they walk back without working, losing their entire day of wage work. So definitely the corruption is not getting stopped, because I also come from the block where the minister and his sons were deeply engaged into corrupting the whole Narega. In 2 villages, they managed to siphon 71 crore rupees of Narega. A minister who's a Panchayati Raj minister who continued to hold the position because the party does not, punish him, or his saying that his sons had done the corruption. My point is that there are enough evidence. This government has also got in their own records that the corruption is not being challenged by the digitalization process. In fact, what digitalization is doing is reducing the number of people who are actually entitled to access the schemes, but they are not being able to do that. So in terms of what even Neha was right now saying, that the promises that have come in this scheme for education, for setting up the she marts, for setting up district level hostels, all these potential employment or enterprise opportunities for women. I think what is required is to make sure that the policies are more enabling, where there is where there is a revisiting of the whole digitalization policy of the state, and the state has to itself also recognize, like the Ministry of Panchayati Raj once observed how the NMMS was actually causing corruption, creating corruption spaces. So the ministries also have to study these, and maybe then we are able to see actually the gender budget and the budget for social inclusion getting utilized for the right purposes. I'll stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neeta Hardikar, bringing up some very uncomfortable truths based on your first-hand experience. This is very important, and your suggestion that there is a need to revisit the digitalization policy because it's harming, it's doing nothing but reducing the number of people who are entitled to government services. Now I come to Ms. Supriya Jaan. Again, very important contribution her organization Coro has made in terms of working with the rural, urban, and tribal areas in the most difficult circumstances, and those who are totally marginalized and at the bottom of the economy, they work with them. And Supriya ji, as a community-based leader, how do you find the union budget and also the response of FM's announcement of 3 kartavyas or duties that is defined the trust for current budget, which is accelerating and sustaining economic growth, fulfilling popular aspirations, and ensuring equitable progress for household, communities, and region. And what are your response to the budget? Because you have spearheaded the campaign on Right to Pee. So I would also, and your organization has worked extensively on the WASH budget, water, sanitation, and also the condition welfare of Safai Karmacharis, and challenges that you have encountered while sending proposals or the fund utilization by the elected representatives, as you also work with the women elected representatives. Over to Supriya.
Thank you, Vibhuti ji, for such a kind introduction. Many more critical truths to come, I would say. It was really interesting to listen to all other speakers before me. And I was looking at the headlines during the budget, when the budget was presented, like record high allocation for women-led development, while expressing significant concern regarding lack of deep structural transformative change. So there were all headlines all over, and I've just noted down few words, words like, we have all heard them, and I will also tell you the words which I was looking forward to hear. So words like Nari Shakti, Lakpati Didi, women-led development, Vikasit Bharat, Atmanirbhar Bharat, सबका विकास, सबका साथ सबका विकास, अन्नदाता, मेक इन इंडिया, मिशन जन धन, historic, precedental, and empowerment. These were the words we have been hearing in last 1 week, I would say. And also during the presentation of the budget. I would say we at the grassroots were looking forward to hear the words like domestic workers, women farmers, gig workers, Dalit women, Adivasi women, single women, sex workers, marginalized communities, minorities, unpaid workers, trade unions. I was struggling to look at these words. I know there have been many analyses made by many different people, and these words they've been trying to highlight. But when we say record high allocation for women-led development, I also realized that there is total misalignment between intent and impact. मैं ना थोड़ा सा ढूंढने की बहुत कोशिश करती हूँ कुछ तो पॉजिटिव मिल जाए, बट ऐसे होता है कि कुछ पॉजिटिव मिल जाता है और फिर रियलाइज हो जाता है कि नहीं, ये रिवाइज होने वाला है, जैसे कि माइनॉरिटी बजट्स बहुत बार वो बढ़ता है, बाद में रिवीजन वो कम हो जाता है. तो these are the things which keep you every budget is a choice about who counts. These are the people, are they counted or not? So there are 16 ministries which talks about education, food security, health, rural development, women and child welfare, and many more. So I would speak about few provisions of these ministries which are so-called social sector, which curtail the needs of people, and then I will move to what is there for WASH. Hope it is fine. So first thing was, I was looking for what is a budget for ASHA workers honorarium. budget is silent, or it has made any change? It was earlier 2700 for it is silent. I will not get into digits actually. मैं ऐसा भी सोच रही थी बजट और आंकड़े ये जो सब इंग्लिश में आता है उसको आसान कैसे करें, तो आशा वर्कर्स के लिए ऑनरेरियम साइलेंट। दूसरा पॉइंट है आंगनवाड़ी बजट। आंगनवाड़ी बजट के लिए एक अमाउंट है, ऐसा नहीं कि बहुत है, बट it is insufficient, I would say, because Anganwadi doesn't have a proper structure. They do not have toilet facilities. There are so many other issues which Anganwadis is still dealing with. Third in my mind was funds for rural employment. It's less than half of the fund which can take care of 125 working days. So then Mahila Kisan Sashakti Pariyojana. So we say that 2015-16 census, agricultural census, talks about 73% of land, agricultural land we have, out of which 12.8% is owned by women. But despite women performing 60 to 70% of agricultural work, allocation for women-specific agricultural initiatives remain insufficient. So this is the fourth thing. Fifth thing is about minority affairs ministry. Sorry, it looks as if there is highest allocation on paper, but we have seen in last 3 years there have been revision and then it leads to reduction. So there have been schemes like Nai Manzil, Ustad, minority women leadership, Hamari Dharohar, then assistance to UPSC, SSC. These are all discontinued. Then it is also about Maulana Azad Medical Aid, Bicycle Yojana, Maulana Azad Foundation. Discontinuation of all this, or there are no funds left for all this. So when we talk about माइनॉरिटी अफेयर्स मिनिस्ट्री में क्या रखा है, तो कागज पे तो है, लेकिन जब ये सारी इंपॉर्टेंट स्कीम स्क्रैप की जाती हैं और इंपॉर्टेंट प्रोविजंस ही नहीं दिए जाते हैं, तो फिर हम उसको हाईएस्ट एलोकेशन कैसे बोल सकते हैं, ये मेरा सवाल है। सिक्स्थ पॉइंट अबाउट लेबर मिनिस्ट्री बजट फॉर अनऑर्गेनाइज्ड सेक्टर, ये तो बहुत बड़ा और भी मसला है ना। वी लुक फॉरवर्ड फॉर women's workspace participation. While the budget aims to boost it, but informal, low paying, but we look for informal, low paying roles. So our focus should be on formal work opportunities. अभी हमारा focus क्या है? हमारा focus है SHG, micro loans, and we all have seen the disastrous impact of microfinance and its connection with women across the nation. तो फिर भी we are talking about this. This makes me uncomfortable. Then the point on seventh point is about Nirbhaya Fund. Nirbhaya Fund has remained stagnant, I would say. It was the same as it was last year. But court infrastructure, forensic facilities, इसके बारे में कुछ भी नहीं बोला गया है। साइबर क्राइम्स इतने बढ़ रहे हैं, उसके लिए कुछ भी प्रोविजन नहीं की गई है। तो फिर हम क्या बोले, मतलब, and there some have already pointed out, when these things were decided, there was no inclusion of diverse people in the consultations that were made. So फिर आएगा कहाँ से? We talk about shelter homes for survivals. Are there any provisions for them? No, we have not come across. Then one-stop centers. No. And when we look at the gender budget statement, the realization is there are larger initiatives. Yes, there are larger initiatives, but the challenge is, जब यहाँ पे are women benefited from these large initiatives, तो फिर हमारे पास challenge है, because there we lacks, there is lack of accountability, because when you make provisions for all, including women, in larger schemes, then how do we find out who has benefited and who has not? And can we claim them as pro-women schemes? And when we talk about women, I have also figured out that For transgender community, forget about LGBTQI community, transgender community, the word I have not found it in anywhere. Please correct me if I have missed it. It's not there.
It's not there.
Maternity cash benefit scheme. Food subsidy, I will not speak because Neeta ji has already spoken about it. Allocation for widows, elderly, disabled person. Indira Gandhi Nation Widow Pension Scheme is rupees 300 per month. I mean, what should I say? And we are diverting funds for NTDNT communities, PVTG communities, and we are getting back to Ladli Behna. So our NTDNT community is not Ladli Behnas. They have not got this. तो हम किसके लिए प्रोविजन करते समय किसका प्रोविजन निकाल रहे हैं, क्या हमें इसकी परवाह है या नहीं है? तो नेक्स्ट पॉइंट ऑफ कोर्स पीवीटीजी जो पीएम जनमन नो फंड एलोकेशन, आई मीन पर्टिकुलरली वल्नरेबल ट्राइब्स के लिए कुछ भी फंड एलोकेशन नहीं है. आई एम लाइक स्पीचलेस. और एनटीडीएनटी के लिए लास्ट
72 PVGTs and more than 700 tribes.
And we have made for NTDNT and communities, there is a provision, I know, 30.30 crores, but we have seen that they remain unspent. और unspent का मतलब lack of need नहीं है. We need it, but we don't know whom it is reached and whom are actually मतलब जिसके लिए चाहिए वो exclude हो रहे हैं, वो देखने की जरूरत है. So we also work with NTDNT and PVTG communities. What do we say to them? कि है भाई कुछ भी नहीं है. तो SC/ST community. Then there was a scheme PM Girls Hostel which is discontinued. But I've heard then working women hostels. It is also another question. But I've heard that district level. I think. डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल हॉस्टल्स फॉर गर्ल्स हैव बीन अनाउंस्ड. बट हमें देखना है चाहिए कि इन हॉस्टल में क्या वो जरूरतमंद लड़कियां हैं, उन्हीं को एडमिशन मिलेगा या किसको एडमिशन मिलेगा. सो एलिजिबिलिटी एंड ऑल दैट विल फॉलो. इट्स एन अनदर डिस्कशन. सो एकलव्य मॉडल रेजिडेंशियल स्कूल हैज कंटिन्यूड. मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ ट्राइबल अफेयर्स वर्सेस मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ न्यू रिन्यूएबल resources, उसमें तो it's growing and tribal affairs reduction. So ये सारी बातें हमें क्या बताती है? सबका साथ सबका विकास या किसका विकास? That's the question that makes me feel agitated. Because I'll make 3 points and then I will move to Wash. Tech companies get tax break. Children nutrition programs under funds. Corporation gets incentives. Care workers, unpaid workers, underpaid. Data centers gets priority. ये बहुत समझदारी से हमें देखना है कि डेटा सेंटर्स गेट प्रायोरिटी. माइनिंग इंडस्ट्रीज कॉरिडोर्स, इसको भी प्रायोरिटी है. Mining industrial corridors, these are all priorities. Displaced communities don't get mentioned. Isn't that heartening? Abhi, this is more or less I was trying to look at from gender lens कि ये सारी 14-16 social sector ministries हैं, इसमें क्या provisions दिख रही है और क्या provisions missing है. So when it comes to next is about sanitation and frontline workers. ये लोग सफाई कर्मचारी जिन्हें कहते हैं frontline workers they are, and majority of sanitation workforce comes from SC background. We cannot deny it. It is caste based till date. तो अगर हम देखें कि if we were to look at the schemes, programs for sanitation workers in our country, Namaste scheme was introduced in 2023, replacing earlier schemes called schemes for rehabilitation of manual scavengers, SRMS. But हुआ क्या है? This replacement entirely erased human rights issues and aspects from sanitation work, made it entirely an issue of mechanization of sanitation. Allocation under Namaste for year 2026-27 is 110 crore, which was 130 crore in last financial year. It's also, we need to also recognize October 2023 में एक जजमेंट आया था, लैंडमार्क जजमेंट था वो, डॉक्टर बलराम सिंह वर्सेस यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया. सुप्रीम कोर्ट ऑर्डर्ड nationwide survey of people engaged in manual scavenging, which was supposed to be completed by 2024 October, but it is yet to be completed. So it raises a serious question on the power of the Supreme Court, along with shallow intention and denial of justice by the states to deliver justice to people engaged in sanitation work, especially manual scavenging. एंड अभी तो हम बात कर रहे हैं टॉयलेट्स की, ड्रिंकिंग वाटर की, मैनुअल स्कैवेंजिंग की, बट hundreds of women who are engaged in garbage picking, segregation and cut pulling work, they have reportedly, there are different health issues, but I want to see where are all of them, you know, in this wash budget. Are they being seen anywhere or not? And when we talk about wash Grameen has got some budget. It has been restored, but when it comes to स्वच्छ भारत अभियान अर्बन 50% रिडक्शन, क्या करेंगे हम? शहरें इतनी ओवर पॉपुलेटेड होती जा रही हैं, और उसके लिए अगर 50% बजट रिडक्शन हुआ है तो हम इसे कैसे देखेंगे? जल जीवन allocation for Jal Jeevan mission, SWM Grameen, they have pushed back to mission mode level, and even as revised estimate of 25-26, large amount remain unspent and slow progress on the ground. Unspent की अलग वजह है, उसका अलग डिस्कशन हो सकता है. Unspent, this is a good reason, you know, it's unspent, so it's not needed. क्यों देना चाहिए? Restore करो या reduce करो. So that has been the strategy, but no one wants to get into the reasons why it was unspent. And what was the reason for it? Drinking water and sanitation in village continue to face implementation challenges. What are we thinking to deal with these implementation challenges? ऐसे लगता है ना ये बजट की बात नहीं है, but है. If it is not getting implement, तो फिर ये बजट की बात नहीं है, ऐसा हम नहीं बोल सकते. So budgetary allocation directly targeting specific welfare for frontline workers, that is Safai Karmachari, is minimal. Low allocation, 1 lakh for specialized Safai Karmachari, and corporation की जो बात हो रही है वो तो अभी still on hold. So I think जैसे मैं बोल रही थी, अंडर यूटिलाइजेशन रिफ्लेक्ट्स, इट डज नॉट रिफ्लेक्ट लैक ऑफ नीड, बट स्ट्रक्चरल एक्सक्लूजन, low pension amounts, and I would say weak outreach. So I felt that there are many things, many points to ponder, but I think these are the main highlights. So there are no funds for rehabilitation of manual scavengers, by the way. So अभी हमें देखना है इसको हम कैसे देखेंगे. कॉर्पोरेशन है, सर्वे आने वाला है, तो कुछ रिवीजन हो सकती है, ऐसा हम we can be little hopeful, you know. There can be some critics and there can be some revisions where the fund has been insufficient in these all different areas. I think I'll stop here and we can move ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Supriya ji, for bringing out such an important point, and most of the how we are a point of structural exclusion. I like very much that how those who make the budget, they see the class interest of those who are verbally articulate and who can demand and pressurize for their entitlement, while those who are don't even have voice, or those who voice is there's no one to amplify their voice, they are the ones who left out. And not only it's that civil society organizations are amplifying their voice, but they are neglected by the those who are the elitist forces. No. Now I would like to ask Ms. Aarohi Damle, who has been working on the issue of gender-based violence at a ground level. And can you respond to the allocation of funds to prevent gender-based violence for One-Stop Crisis Center, Nirbhaya Fund, infrastructure for safety, and also at an operational level, while working on One-Stop Crisis Center, what kind of challenges you have encountered as an organization while putting all the services in place? And according to you, like, what are the reasons for non-utilization of funds earmarked for prevention of gender-based violence, sustaining infrastructure, caring for safe space, and institutionalizing support services for the survivors?
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm just going to share a PowerPoint so that आप follow along कर सकते हैं. And I actually thank the speakers before me for really setting the stage and offering the broad contours of the budget for 2026, so that I can really get into the smaller sub-schemes and talk about implementation, especially from the perspective of gender-based violence and safety. Please let me know if my slides are not visible, but I just want to, say that this budget has talked quite a bit about Vikasit Bharat, women-led development, and all on the back of, increased investments in higher education, multi-skilled care workers, most of which will be women, hostels, etc. And all of this is focused on trying to pull more and more women into public spaces. And I think, we can applaud that sentiment, but it really takes away and is a contradiction, because the budgets for safety infrastructures have taken a hit. So I will spend most of my time really talking about Mission Shakti, safe cities, and how we struggle with implementing a lot of the schemes on the ground. So I think to start with, I'll give a little bit of an overview of Mission Shakti. Mission Shakti started around 2022 and collapsed a lot of ongoing interventions for safety, security, and empowerment. There are two main sub-schemes. There is the Sambal sub-scheme, which has your one-stop center, women helpline, Nari Adalat, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. Samarthya, which is more focused on, rehabilitation and empowerment. You have your Shakti Sadans or shelter homes. Sakhi Nivas, or your hostels. Then you have your Matru Vandan Yojana and the Empowerment Hub for Women. So these are the multiple interventions that have been pulled together in these two main sub-schemes. And it's really a continuum that they're imagining from prevention right up to empowerment. And, the budget, I think everybody has talked about this. There is money allocated, but there is barely any money spent. And I think from the public data, what we are seeing, especially for Mission Shakti, and also especially because it holds the funds for important interventions like one-stop centers, is that there is a chronic underutilization of funds. Mission Shakti has been getting upwards of 3,000 crores allocated since 2024. But as you can see, the spending is always hovering around 50 to 60% of the allocated budget. So, like the speakers before me pointed out, underutilization doesn't mean that there is no demand for schemes. It just means there is some, or a lot, I would say, a lot of, fallouts as the scheme trickles down to the grassroots. And I would point here to the Sambal scheme, which is your women helpline and your one-stop centers, which are crisis response services and very required given the numbers of women and girls we see affected by violence. The utilization numbers are 202 crores in 24 and 322 crores as per the revised estimates for 25-26. So these are very, very low. And again, women one-stop centers and helplines are all centrally funded by the Nirbhaya Fund. So we all know that there's ample amount of money available in the Nirbhaya Fund. It's just there is no utilization that we see on the ground. And I think it's also important to point here that when you put a lot of schemes under two major categories. The overall bucket of funds is really shrinking. We are not able to see the disaggregated data कि one stop center के लिए कितना पैसा रखा है versus hub of empowerment के लिए कितना पैसा है. All of this data is not available, and it doesn't give us a clarity on which schemes the government is really prioritizing and which schemes it's deprioritizing, which I think from the perspective of responding to GBV is extremely frustrating and difficult to manage. And I think while making this presentation also, I had the same frustration because I couldn't find that disaggregated data for, sub-schemes like one-stop center, Shakti Sadan, Sakhi Nivas. I had to pull this information from Lok Sabha questions and also the standing committee report of the WCD, which is still 2 years old. And again, we see that as per the standing committee report, one-stop centers has to have has an approved budget of 1,600 crores for the 22 to 26 program window. But if we look at the released funds, only about 512 crore rupees have been released, which is a dismal amount considering the the number of one-stop centers, which is 800 plus running across the country. And I think the same is applicable for the Women's Helpline, which is supposed to be a 24/7 helpline where survivors can call, access services, and then get referred to the service that is more appropriate for them. Here again, we see, barely any spending across the year, 17 crores apparently in 25-26, which is just nothing for running something as infrastructure heavy as a helpline. So yeah, I mean, I was looking at these numbers, it was just really frustrating. And also another frustrating factor was we are looking at safety only for women and girls. For transgender persons, the only thing that I could find was the SMILE program, which is the support for marginalized individuals for livelihood and enterprise. And under that, there is a provision for creating Garima Grihas. And there is again severe underutilization of funds under the SMILE scheme. And for the 21 Garima Grihas that they've set up in the past 3 or 4 years, they've only utilized 8 crores. Again, it's an asset-heavy program. It requires human resource. There is just no money being put into programs that really keep people safe when they step out of their homes, right? Or in a scenario where they're facing violence in their homes or in public spaces, there is nowhere to really turn to, which is a public service, free service that gets you, access to justice. So those are the issues that I'm seeing with the union budget. It's not trickling down as it should. In terms of the question you asked, ma'am, in terms of the implementational challenges, I'll just give a broad overview. These are all demand-driven schemes, like I said. But what happens is that there is absolutely low levels of awareness among survivors also and first responders also of these available services. So there is low footfall. Low footfall means that there is low utilization of funds. Low utilization means there is, lesser funds allocated in the next round. So this cycle really ends up continuing in a circle. And we still don't address the problem of how are we getting people aware of these services. Nowhere in the budgets for OSCs does that get addressed. I can say from the experience in Maharashtra that for OSCs, there is maybe one line item that you can use for awareness activities in communities and bastis, and you can use that same line item for training of responders. And the budgeted amount is so low that you can only use it for maybe 1 or 2 activities across the year, which doesn't cover how many rigorous regular trainings you require to develop a safe and sensitive survivor-centered response. Like I said, inadequate training and capacity building is all linked to having no dedicated budget amounts. When CSOs were called on to run the OSCs, there was delayed payment of their dues, and that delay was not 6 months, it was couple of years at minimum, and CSOs had to bear the brunt of running the operational costs, which absolutely is difficult if you run a non-profit. So there were staff shortages, there are vacant positions, salaries are not going through, and it's just it feeds into the structural troubles that the services face. This is true across OSC shelters, anything that is resource heavy, human resource, and capital asset resource heavy. Again, budgets really don't make any clear cut demarcations for infrastructure and any infrastructure upgrades. So OSC centers, the situation is so bad, it barely provides shelter to anybody who's accessing the service, which it's supposed to do as per the guidelines. And over the years, I think these services were started in 2015. Over the years, their functionality has really been diluted. Take, for example, the Women Helpline, the 181 number. It was started with the purpose of providing first-line support to anybody who calls. So the person responding would take their, understand their history, would follow up with them, would share resources for the services that are more relevant to the survivor. Now it's turned into a mere switchboard service where anybody calling the helpline is only supposed to give out a referral to the local OSC and the police centers. So there is no process of really getting feedback from any survivors, trying to understand any grievances they are facing while they talk to the police or the medical officers, none of that. So there is no way of, creating a safe a referral pathway for the survivor at all. Again, that just makes a multi-sectoral response, which we keep talking about always in GBV response, absolutely impossible, because nobody is aware of the other services and nobody can refer anybody to other services. And I think one of the biggest root causes of all of these problems is that the budgeting for none of these services is made in a consultative way. If you're calling upon like civic society organizations to take up, or help you run these services, the budgeting has to take into account what they think is most important when running the service, but that is it's completely ignored. And also, in the last couple of years, they have taken away OSCs from the CSOs as well. So that is quite telling of maybe just how impossible the government is finding the criticism of the civil society organizations. If I have to move towards the safety in public spaces and safe city allocations, which have been, quite the touted flagship program, over the years, the allocations have really reduced. Last year, it was only about 215 crores. And this year, it's just down to 125. I think it's safe city allocations we know have purely been used to bolster the technical interventions into surveillance in public spaces. So it's all about setting up security cameras everywhere. I think Arvind Kejriwal's tweet always comes to mind, is where he talks about how proud he is of how many cameras Delhi has. And, that is followed up with AI analytics, it's followed up with facial recognition, it's followed up with so many other niche technical interventions that they forget that safe city also comprised of other components, which was making the civic infrastructure more gender inclusive, not just for women and girls, but also for the trans queer community. And that's not being looked at all. I think when the budget declines, that they've forgotten that other components are part of the budget. And I think somebody mentioned this, but funds for cybercrime prevention are just not allocated this year. No funds also for setting up women's help desks or anti-human trafficking units, which were all part of last year's budget, which is also a small amount, but it was something. This year, nothing has been put aside. So reporting any kind of violence, there is no investment in that. There is a lot of investment from a forensic capacity building perspective, modernization of those evidence and proof making capacities, but nothing to encourage any survivor to come forward and report violence. So again, I don't see any similar investments in rural areas. I just know that some part of Nirbhaya Fund is for training elected women representatives and also sensitizing men in the community in rural areas. But none of those Nirbhaya funds are utilized as per the dashboard, which is only reflecting 2024 data. So public spaces has some weight in the cities, but nothing at all as yet in rural areas. I'd just like to end by talking about a few things that we can do or a campaign for in the more short term. Is that budgeting has to really take into account the initiation of a program and also the longevity of the program. It cannot just be funds for infrastructure, but then we forget about how we have to maintain that infrastructure. It has to be a long-term perspective. That long-term perspective also means that we have to create avenues for building the capacity of the staff, spreading awareness of these services, and also timely disbursement of whatever funds are being allocated. Costing studies of these schemes, which are not available anywhere, need to be something that we have to focus on, because the amount of funds allocated are just not enough for that service. And we need some sort of evidence and some sort of data to sort of prove what we are saying. There also has to be more intentional investment across schemes in training and capacity building of citizens and GBV responders. And also there has to be a shift from just talking about allocations to really looking at what is the outcome and what is the feedback of the survivors who are maybe accessing these services. There have to be evaluations conducted for these schemes. I know OSCs were evaluated by Niti Aayog in 2021, but that report is not available. And that report is also quite dated now. So we need to have regular evaluations to see how the schemes are panning out on the ground. And once evaluations are completed, they need to be made public. Any kind of information that we are feeding into these systems also have to be in the public domain. So OSCs, when civil society organizations were running them, were not allowed to access the data of the survivors that they were inputting themselves. So that was a major issue. And this is an issue also from the perspective of we don't know what's happening to very sensitive data about survivors. But also, secondly, if we don't have data, we can't really push back with the government, and neither can we create more informed schemes on the ground that really help survivors. So both from the perspective of negotiating with the government and also bolstering responses on the ground, data is very, very critical and requires more intentional investment. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Aarohi ji, for such a data-driven and evidence-based analysis of the budget on budgetary provision to prevent gender-based violence. I think it is very important, as you say, that we need to translate the gender commitments, the posturing, into financial commitment. It's very, very important. And also see to it that the programs are not subverted by the bureaucratic lethargy or the prejudice or any other technical hurdles which come up, which is the major reason for underutilization of funds. No? Now we have our last presentation by Dr. G. Uma, who is going to give tie up all the issues of the previous 5 speakers and also give us a comprehensive view of the budget of Ministry of Women and Child Development and also the overall budgetary allocations. What is the tilt in the budget? Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for this opportunity for the IMPRI for providing this opportunity. Every time I am learning lots from this discussions. And earlier also, one session I could able to contribute. If I don't contribute, I regularly listening this and learning a lot from this. Actually, I have a small presentation. That presentation like I have covered the specifically health and education sector as well as gender budgeting component. Actually, government statement also, I have gone through the government statement. The government statement for Union Budget 2026-27 has responded that it has provided a significant thrust to gender responsive budgeting. So that is the statement given by the government. Really, have they increased the allocation for the gender budgeting, or how are the government really looking at the gender issues that we need to look into it? Just I'll share my presentation.
It's in working mode. Make it a slideshow.
Okay. Yes, I'm
Okay.
it has come to slide.
Fine.
First of all, I will give an example of health and education sector. Why I have specifically like given an example for health and education sector is that if you look at the overall budget, union budget for 26 and 27, what I have found is that they have concentrated on care economy and women's workforce related to specifically on health professionals, unskilled care workers, as well as secondly, the budget concentrated on promoting women entrepreneurship and self-help groups. And third is that they have given little emphasis on education, specifically creating hostels for the girls to increase their percentage in STEM education. These are the major areas the government has concentrated. That's why I have quickly, we will look into the health and education sector, because previous speakers, Professor Paramita Saha and Professor Shah, they have given a macroeconomic picture and they have assessed our macroeconomy as well as they have given us the overall view on the 26-27 budget, as well as Miss Neeta Hardikar, when she talked about that, she was mentioning about the technology, digitalization, as well as Miss Supriya Jaan, she was talking about that there is not much emphasis on transgender community. So we have overall, we have discussed about the social sector as well as the budgetary allocations for the various sectors. Let me give an example of with regard to health sectors. When you look at, you analyze the budget, it's more focused on mental health, and they have mainstreamed the mental health in the public policy, like giving stress on new mental health institutions they are planning to start in Ranchi and Tezpur, as well as the finance minister. She herself stated that, I quote, institutions aims to improve access to specialized mental health care, advanced training, research, particularly in an undeserved region. These are the statements she has given, as well as like this budget, if you look at that, we have not discussed, they have given a big push on Ayush ecosystem. Like they want to strengthen the Ayurveda as well as clinical excellence in traditional medicine. The Ayush Ministry's budget has been increased, as well as digital counseling services. Specifically, talked about the referral system needs to be strengthened, institutional capacity, primary health care should be integrated, as well as they want to, the budget emphasized on coordinated care that will, if they improve the skill and capacity of the healthcare workers, that is the emphasis it has given. But here we need to see that who are all the healthcare workers. Majority of them women. Caregivers are like, as far as health industries are concerned, their majority of them are women. So that their like they want to build the capacity, skill of the care workers, as well as budget emphasize that so far Indian medical professional, Indian medical system, as well as it could be Indian medical system viewed from the outside as an India could give an affordable care. So what is next phase is that it's like we need to concentrate on advanced research, biopharmaceuticals, clinical trials. Here only I would like to emphasize, when we talk about the clinical trials, there also most of the time, like when they want to do the clinical trials, there are two things. Most of the medical professionals, they are not gender sensitive. Like sometimes the particular medicine they want to, like it's mostly in a gender neutral way, most of the medical trials will happen. Sometimes they don't understand that the difference between the biological difference between male and female, and even they consider both not only male female, even if they don't consider male and female, other genders also they don't consider. When it comes to clinical trials, how they are going to do these clinical trials, that is the other specific areas we need to ponder upon. Next one is that investment in specialized education, research institutions, workforce development. These are all the certain areas the budget is talking about, that, as well as artificial intelligence, as well as secure digital platforms, data-driven diagnostics. These are all the issues. It has come up in the budget that we need to look into from a gender perspective, as well as biopharma sakti, biologic medicines, as well as they would like to establish the National Institutes of Pharmaceutical Education and Research. And significant component is that creating a network of 1,000 accredited Indian clinical trials. Here, how are they going to do this clinical trials? How do they view? Are they medical professionals? Are they gender sensitive? These are the questions it has come to my mind when I look into this clinical trials. As well as Central Drug Standard Control Organization will be strengthened to meet the global standards. Most again and again it talks about the clinical trials, as well as strengthening the caregivers. These are the two major components when it comes to allocation of health sectors, as well as like significant important areas we need to notice is that full exemption of basic customs duty of 17 cancer-related drugs and medicines. Here it's a important, more and recent one data, it has come from Chennai, in that more number of women, they were affected by the cancer, as well as specifically reproductive organs are getting affected by this cancer. So this is very important. Maybe women may get benefited because of the full exemption of basic customs duty on 17 cancer-related drugs and medicines. Again, it is clinical trials. Like when you look at the health spendings, I am moderate growth with the ministry allocations for 26-27 is that 1.05 lakh crore. It's like increasing the 9%, as well as one is the trial, second one is that 100 crore provision supported training for allied health professionals and push to extend care beyond hospitals, especially geriatric services. This is very important here. When we talk about the allied health professionals, most of the time the allied health professionals are women. They are the care workers already. Because of these care activities, they are triply burdened. So how are we going to look into this training support? Will it reduce their burden at the personal space, or it will increase their burden? So more research needs to be conducted, and policy should be clear. How are they going to implement these provisions? As well as the finance minister stated that robust care ecosystem encompassing geriatric and allied care services will be developed, as well as national skills qualification framework. Allied programs will train multi-skilled caregivers who will combine they will combine with the care work with the yoga, wellness, as well as medical and assistive services. 1 lakh caregivers are to be trained, and this budget is concentrating more on the expansion of allied health professionals, specifically in this health sector. As far as nutrition is concerned, this is that they have allocated 18,580 crore for targeting the nutritional support for pregnant women, lactating mothers, and adolescent girls. If you look at the health sector from a gender perspective, mostly it focuses on care infrastructure, mental health, as well as reducing. I could able to see that one significant point is that time poverty. It is trying to reduce the women's time poverty. When you talk about that care economy and skilling, mental health, nutrition, geriatric care, Ayurvedic expansion, the inequitable gender-based distribution of unpaid domestic work, often we all know that it's a double duty for women who participate in the workforce, and they have frequently deprived of specific time. This phenomenon is known as the time poverty. And because of this time poverty, they are not able to participate in the economic opportunities, and most of the time they themselves, they don't even take care of their own health. It reflects, whatever we are talking about the time poverty, it reflects the systematic oppression of women perpetuated by the gender inequality and various gender norms. These norms dictates what type of activities the women they have to do, their responsibilities, what privileges the women could able to have, as well as due to the time poverty, they are not able to access the paid employment, lack of resources, most of the time they lack autonomy. So what I have seen from this budget is that it has to address this time poverty, and trying to address it, and how it is going to address this time poverty, we must look into it. Next is with regard to education. There is an budget has provided the provision for the establishment of 5 university townships near major industrial and logistic corridors, provision to set up a girls' hostel for every district to encourage the participation of more girls in STEM education. This discussion has come in the, previous speakers also, they have discussed about the establishment of girls' hostel. How are they going to establish the girls' hostel? In the districts, maybe most of the times the districts from their own place, maybe 50 or 100 kilometers away from their location, will the family allow the girl children to go to the hostel? How are they going to implement it? What is what relationship the budget is talking about the STEM education, as well as STEM education and establishing the hostel. These are the 2 things we need to look into it, as well as the budget is talking about the education to employment to enterprise. As far as education sector is concerned, from this, they were talking about the strengthening the service sector as a core driver of Viksit Bharat. How are they going to do that? As well as the STEM hostel also, now already there are so many girls hostels from the Ministry of Social Justice, as well as Ministry of Women and Child Development. So what new they are going to establish this girls hostel, how this girls hostel and STEM education is related to. STEM education is basically, it starts from 11th standard to 12th standard. Afterwards, we need to encourage the girls to join in a STEM education. So this relationship I could not understand from this budget provisions. as well as the Union Education Ministry allocation has been increased through revised budget, but most of this amount, it is allocated for the Department of School Education and Literacy, and the Adult Tinkering Lab saw its funding jump from 500 crore like from the last year to 3,200 this year, as well as certain schemes like PM Poshan scheme also has been increased. There are two things here we need to see. That budget is talking about the artificial intelligence curriculum from school onwards, as well as the upgrading the state SCERT, like NCERT, there is a state level educational research training institutes. They want to strengthen it, as well as AI curriculum. Now, other states, like for example, Australia and other countries, they were reducing the children to reducing the children's screen time, as well as they don't want the children to hook into mobile phones. But in our curriculum, we would like to introduce the artificial intelligence in the school onwards. So there is a contradiction between the existing research says that we should restrict the children to access to mobile phones, but budget allocation is about the artificial intelligence. As these are the two things. When we talk about this technology and other provisions, there is a gap between accessing the technology when it comes to location. Maybe urban children, they could easily access to technology, but when we talk about the like children from rural areas, they may not be that much access to technology. So how are we looking at to this allocation? That is the another significant point we need to look into it. As far as gender budgeting is concerned, as I have already mentioned, Union Budget 26-27 provides the significant thrust on gender budgeting, gender responsive budgeting. That's what it is, response from the Union Budget. As per the statement from the government, the share of the gender budget in the total Union Budget has been increased to 9.37% in financial year 26-27 from 8.86% in financial year 25-26. That it has government has a commitment to increase the gender responsive governance. But when we look at this allocations, it has allocated heavily on strengthening care economy and women's workforce, that I will say, and promoting women's entrepreneurship and self-help groups, focused interventions for Divyangjan, and mental health and child well-being, advancing girls' education and safe infrastructure facilities in the school education. These are the areas they are concentrating as far as gender budgeting is concerned. As far as when we talk about the human capital and service sector in the budget, as per budget allocations, mostly it is about the upgrading the allied health professionals, training caregivers, like establishing medical hubs and developing university townships, as well as expanding tourism and hospitality infrastructure to strengthen service sector employment. When we talk about the inclusion and livelihood, because we did have a discussion about the inclusion in the beginning itself, the first speaker itself talked about the inclusion. When we talk about the inclusion and livelihoods, mostly concentrating on CMARTs and women-led enterprises, livelihood and assistive support for persons with disabilities, expansion of mental health infrastructure, and strengthening emergency care capacity in district hospitals. These are the significant area the budget has concentrated. I would like to, when I look into the overall budgetary provision as well as look into the gender budgeting component, VC from Symbiosis International University observed that what he felt is that I also maybe agree with him, that I quote, initiatives such as training 1.5 lakh skilled caregivers across childcare, elderly care, and allied sectors recognize forms of work that are predominantly undertaken by women and can offer a flexible employment pathways. That is what he said, that basically the budget would like to train more and more women as a skilled caregivers, because already the women, they are the caregivers, they are giving, due to the care activities there, their burden has doubly and became sometimes they're triply burdened. But the budget has concentrated mostly on these caregiving activities, as well as they would like to train the caregivers. And we all know that most of the caregivers are predominantly, more than 90% of the caregivers are women. So thus it looked at it want to train the women, and that will provide or offer flexible employment pathways. This is what I found it. Thank you so much for this opportunity, ma'am. If any question comes, I would like to take.
Yeah. Thank you, all the panelists. You have helped us a lot in terms of showing the relationship between macroeconomic policies and the union budget. And I think I will not repeat because all of you have made such an exhaustive presentation. But I would just like to sum up by saying, because we have exceeded time limit, if there are very, very important questions which the sharing with the participants want, then you can go ahead. Neetaji, would you like to have your final words? You have written in chat box. Yeah. Any important concern that you feel that needs to be emphasized or highlighted? Yeah. Please unmute yourself. Yeah.
I think the budget somewhere needs to look at the revision in the minimum wages and look at the living wages as a central point. And as in the summing up, just mentioned that a lot of care work goes as a responsibility of women, the gendered role, and even in the employment, we are looking at that as a possibility. Somewhere respectable wages and social security of all the caregivers is an important aspect. Somewhere in the budget and in the wages, this needs to be built in. Somewhere there was a question around how much ASHA workers should be paid, and I was just quoting the Narega workers' demand, and if that is the wage that is entitled, they are entitled to based on the Government of India committee, then the budget allocated for Narega will not be enough to pay the dues, and the budget allocated for VB Gramji will also not be will not be adequate for 125 days for all workers. Narega actually offered 12,000 crore workers the wage work, and over 50% of these are women. So if VB Gramji has to become an entitlement, it is a scheme we all know, but if it is committing 125 days a month, a year, then the budget allocated is certainly not adequate, and it has to have a revised wage rate also. Yeah,
And
that was the
Neetaji, we
point I
always
made.
talk about Anganwadi workers and ASHA workers. But what about the midday meal cooks? I have seen them work. They're slogging it out so heavily, and what they get is 36 rupees a day. So I think we need to include them also in when we fight for the scheme workers. That is there. Yeah. Thank you. Now, Supriya Ji, would you like to have your final say? Yeah. Yeah, please go ahead.
4 points, and the first and foremost is intersectionality, which is missing, needs to be looked into when we revisit the allocations. Symbolic versus substantive spendings. When we look at the spendings, collection of gender segregated data, and lastly, need for systemic shift. Shift from schemes to systems. There are shifts in schemes, but systems are overlooked. So I think these are the 3-4 points that we need to.
I think you said it. I think it's very important that we don't see them only as a scheme because they are ad hoc. They are starting and they are discontinued. So I think that is very important, that we need to mainstream everything in the, like the departmental budget only it should come. And also talking about the gender sensitive bottom up or transformative budgeting requires a lot of shift from the elite class to the common people who are making useful contribution and very important contribution to the economy. May they be migrant workers, may they be workers in the informal sector, or care workers and service providers of different kinds, and gig workers, of course, very important. We need regularization for that. I think we had a very, very comprehensive, data-driven, analytically robust, and discussion based on the grounded experiences of all the 6 panelists. Let us remember that budget garners resources through taxation policies and allocates them to different sections of economy. It is a very important tool for affirmative action, for improvement of gender relations through reducing gender gaps in developmental process. And I think if you want to, if we are committed to reduction of economic inequality between men and women, and gender minorities, between rich and poor, between intersectionally vulnerable people and those who have gained all the privileges, I think it's very important that we very judiciously implement the budget and create a public opinion, because now so that there is a very active involvement of people's organization and citizens in the budgetary process. The budgetary policies need to keep into consideration the gender dynamics operating in the economy that came out in all your presentations, and also you provided the insights on the bottom-up budget and also child budget, scheduled caste budget, scheduled tribe budget, water budget, wash budget, and also their implications on the communities in the urban, rural, and forest areas. So we need to continue this process of serious examining of the budget of all the ministries and departments, though we sometimes feel very depressed and demoralized because our voice has no, or our demands have not been respected by the authorities, or at a national level. At a subnational level, many of us are quite effective. We are also invited in the pre-budget discussions, but we see that how the current policy is also starving the state governments with the funds, and we see that the union budget has also neglected the interest of the state. But in this very dark situation, what we see, the ray of hope, is the budget of Kerala, because 100% budgetary allocation is made for children's education, not only girls' education, all children, boy, girl, transgender child, all of them will get education from pre-primary to graduation. I think that's a very bold decision which the government has taken. I know that they have made so many quote-unquote impossible things possible, because the state government allocates 40% of its budget for the social sector. I think that's very important, not to have just only very high SGDP, state gross domestic product, but how you are doing whatever has been economic growth. Has there been distributive justice? Has there been gender justice? Has there been environmental justice? And has there been all types of equity measures and affirmative actions taken by the state is very important. So I think let us continue our exercise and also do the campaigning in favor of social sector budget and inclusive budget. Thank you very much. I thank all the panelists, Professor Paramita Saha, Dr. Neha, Shah, Ms. Neeta Hardikar, Ms. Supriya Jaan, Ms. Aarohi Damle, Professor Uma G from IGNOU. Thank you. Over to our moderator.
So yeah, deeply grateful for all our panelists for this insightful discussion, and thank you for everyone who raised questions and for their active engagement as well. Now I would like to do my formal vote of thanks. As we conclude this panel discussion on gender, social inclusion, and Union Budget 2026-27, I, Shadia Zubair, on behalf of IMPRI, Gender Impact Studies Center, New Delhi, extend my heartfelt gratitude. Our deepest thanks to our chair and experts for today. Thank you to all our esteemed panelists for their insightful and thought-provoking addresses. Your expertise and perspectives have greatly enriched today's session discussion and provided us with valuable takeaways on this critical topic. We deeply appreciate your time and contributions. We also thank all participants who joined us live, raised pertinent questions, and contributed to today's dialogue. For those watching later on your YouTube channel, listening to the podcast, or reading our publications, we deeply value your engagement and interest. We look forward to your participation tomorrow on education, S&T, and R&D, and Union Budget and Vikasit Bharat, Developed India at 2047 and Union Budget. We hope you will continue to join us for future IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning programs. Wishing you all a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Satya. Thank you for moderating the session so well. And thank you, Priyanka ji, and IMPRI team for your hard work.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vibhuti Di.
All of you have put so much of work you have put in, no, to improve the documents, providing, PPTs. All the panelists very seriously. You have gone. Thank you.